But the Giants lose last night 4-3. Second straight game they've lost 4-3 to the Royals. Not the second straight to the Royals, but they've lost 2 now, 4-3.
Yeah.
They've been 16 under 2 other times. So
they've been here before.
They've equaled a season high 16 games under 500.
Yeah, this isn't foreign territory for them. Look, they've just been perennially stuck at this spot, it feels like, the entire season. And I got to be honest, that 9th inning, it is why when people say, yeah, this team's, cursed, or this team's this, or this team's that, I do kind of feel them, because you just assume in the 9th inning, all right, 3-1, Royals closers on the mound. Hasn't been their closer the whole year. They've been decimated by injury. But, this guy, Alex Lang, used to be a closer for the Tigers, pretty good pitcher. Game's over. And you get down to your final out, and you get not 1 but 2 hits. Jung Hoo Lee comes up with a single, clutch knock. And then Adames takes one the other way for a game-tying 2-run homer. And he is fired up. And you're like, all right, maybe this is where the Giants can, again, not like they're going to go on a 10-game winning streak, but can you win a tight game? Can you pull victory from the jaws of defeat? And then in the 10th inning, they just gave the game away. They gave the game away. And the Royals made them make a couple plays with their mitt. Lo and behold, the Giants, who have the second worst fielding percentage, second most errors in the major leagues, botch a couple. There weren't errors, so to speak, but there were mental errors. There's a couple plays they couldn't make. The last one by Eldridge. This is a team that is far from being a group that wins those kinds of games. And that, to me, that was always the calling card, Steiny, of a great Giants team. Dating back, and I know it's a long time ago, but even 2021, those are the games that they win.
They used to, for sure.
And they have not done it, it feels like, at all this season.
Well, and the question I asked you is, does Devers make that play?
You mean the
play at the very end?
The safety squeeze for the win?
I mean, if he fields it cleanly, I'm talking about Eldridge, I think they have him easy at home.
Well, he's trying to make a glove flip. But this is the thing that, to me, I don't know if Devers makes that play or not, but the most frustrating part about that play is people who were watching the whole inning, the Royals tried to lay down a bunt to pitch before.
Yeah.
At the first baseman. So I don't know if Eldridge was creeping in or crashing. I'm assuming he was, because usually you bring corners in a position like that where you're trying to cut off the game-winning run. They telegraphed what they were going to do. And the Royals are not a good team. The Kansas City Royals squared up with whoever was at the plate and said, we're bunting this ball at Bryce Eldridge. And you can either make a play on it or you can lose the game. And that, to me, was frustrating, is that, and Bryce, look, the glove's hopefully going to get there. He was not brought up to play first base. He was brought up primarily to hit. And again, I don't know if Devers makes that play, but it's again, just a glaring part of this team that they do not field particularly well.
No, they don't. And, it all comes back to me, to Tony Vitello, and I'm watching him last night, and you brought this up about his reaction after the Adames homer. He wasn't nearly as excited as some of the players, but I do kind of see. It feels like Vitello's just kind of given in a little bit.
How do you mean?
I think, okay, one of the things that we heard about Vitello was energy. He's an energy guy. He goes to drills with guys. He's emotional. He's upbeat. I don't think he's been that at all for this team. In fact, if you think about it, I think when he first started with the Giants in spring training, I guess they had an early couple workouts where he was into it, but I think Tony Vitello has spent the first portion of the year trying to be somebody that he didn't want the players to think he was, which was a rah-rah college coach. And I don't want to. That was one of his characteristics, that he was extremely enthusiastic, and I think he views that as one of his best characteristics. But I think when he came in, he was smart enough to know that might not work on this level. And so he pulled back. Like, do you think we've seen the real Tony Vitello? A guy who resembles the guy who was at Tennessee?
Maybe in spring training, but not since the regular season start.
Right. And
I think it's because, due to what you're talking about, Tony Vitello he's suppressed some of himself this season. He's suppressed himself because he knows that if you're going to be a roller coaster ride, it's hard to do that for 162 games. You can do it for a 50-game college season. I think you can do it when there's younger, more impressionable people that are on your roster. But all these guys in the major league level are, for the most part, developed. They've gotten here for a reason. So that doesn't really work.
Right.
Why the Adames home run stood out to me is because, and it's not just about this one thing. So Adames hits the home run. He's jacked. He's jumping around the bases. And again, this is a team that's 15 games below 500. But Willie Adames he's excited. And he's shaking high fives with Elliot Ramos. The Bat Boy is standing up. And I just kind of noticed Vitello, he gave him a high five, and then he goes into the rest of the dugout, and everybody else is kind of mobbing him because of the big hit. And part of me was expecting Vitello to be a little fired up about it. And you could say, hey, Evan, he knows that the game's not over. You want your manager to be cool, calm, collected. But it's one of the things that I've noticed this season where there's just kind of a disconnect between him and the team. When the team's excited, he's Cool Hand Luke. When he's fired up, the team is saying, calm down, we've been here before. It's like there's something about him that's just not on the same page with the rest of his guys.
Right.
And I do think that he is trying to ingratiate himself with some of the veterans. Maybe that's why he said after the game that it was Susak that made the incorrect choice by throwing the ball to second base as opposed to Willie Adames not having his foot on the bag. He's sticking up for the vet because Susak's someone kind of an easier target, the way that Steve Kerr went after Will Richard instead of maybe Brandon Pajemski. Right. I think those are the little spots that I've noticed throughout this year that he just seems to be on the opposite side of where his team is. And that's why I feel like he's suppressing himself.
Yeah, listen, the Giants aren't 16 games under 500 because of Tony Vitello. This isn't about this guy can't manage. This isn't about all the mistakes he's made. This isn't even about Posey hiring this guy and taking a chance on him. This is just about, I'm wondering if, he's not what he's been billed as, at least before. You brought this up. All right, this is Tony Vitello on, this is from before the season on.
Is this him on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast?
Correct. Bussin' with the Boys. Just listen to what he says.
Our guys do got a little bit of way about them that, again, if you're cheering for us, I think you enjoy. And if not, you may question it. But I don't think anyone ever goes over the line to do something disrespectful to the opponent. It's just, in baseball, you got to be a personality. If you look at, the most fun teams since we've been alive, the Phillies back in the John Crook era, Darren Dalton and those guys, and the Red Sox when Millar was on their team. I mean, it's long days as a baseball player. You got to have some stuff going on in the locker room to bring you together and also keep you entertained during all those hours.
That was actually from 2022. And let me ask you this. When Buster Posey announced that Vitello was going to be the hire, did you think, here comes a guy with some personality and zest?
Yes.
I did too.
And I was, to be honest, I was a little worried about it. And that's the thing that sticks out to me, Steiny, is it feels like he's worried about it sometimes. That he doesn't want to be the guy who will flip a proverbial spread or air out one of his veterans. He's not going to go after Devers. But if Devers was a senior at Tennessee who did something like that, I absolutely believe, and he might not do it publicly, but right. I absolutely believe that Tony Vitello would chew that player out. And so, and this isn't about baseball, about him, going to a lefty at the wrong time or maybe not knowing or using the extra roster spot for a doubleheader. It's not about that. It's about his personality. And I do think you're right that the billing of Tony Vitello has been different than the guy we've got. And I don't think it's just because of the win and loss record.
No, this is Dave Fleming and Hunter Pence talking about the play in the ninth inning where Adames didn't cover, but Susac was trying to get him out there.
And there was the play the other night in Seattle where Adames was kind of caught away from second, where the Giants had a chance to get an out there. This time he was right around the bag and just didn't stretch.
I don't know if he was not expecting it to come his way. It looked like he was a little bit surprised there.
That was a good play by Susac. That's the winning run that he essentially cut down, and now 2 on, nobody out.
Potentially you can go from hero to GOAT really quickly. We're not here without the Adames homer, but you got to get on the bag and stretch.
All right. Here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to play Vitello.
This is him after the game talking about that play.
So this is Tony Vitello on the play and what he saw.
He had a good view of where the runner was at, probably in a position he wouldn't normally be, but because of what he was doing there, took a crack at the lead out, and I don't know that you would redo it on his end if you had the choice.
All right, so no mention of Adames.
No, he didn't come down Adames' road at all. And I think part of that is purposeful. Honestly, in real time, I didn't think that they were going to get him at second base, which is apparently what Willie thought too, because he wasn't on the bag.
Right.
And he's wondering why the ball is coming to him. I tried to slow it down afterwards to see if it would have been a bang-bang play. I think they probably would have got him, but I'm sure Adames is just thinking, hey, I know it's the winning run, but you take the sure out at first base and then you try and get out of the inning. It's not a situation where you're trying to, and that's what the Giants have done this a lot this year. It's like they're trying to play hero ball. Daniel Susac is trying to make the winning play on defense, and they're just not on the same page. Whether it's the older guys and the younger guys, Vitello, they don't feel like they're on the same page together. And that's why the ninth inning yesterday, the Kansas City Royals won that game because they can do something that the Giants can't, and that's play small ball and execute. When was the last time we saw the Giants try and put a bunt down in a tight situation, to set up the top of their order, to force the other team to make a play? The Royals didn't beat the Giants last night as much as the Giants beat themselves, and they've done that more often than not, it feels like, this year.
So I was also thinking, because I heard some people talking about, how pumped Adames was after his home run, and then he makes, that play or doesn't make that play. And I was talking to Nahegan about this. He's like, you're 15 games under, and all you did was tie the game. And I'm thinking, you could look at it as you're 15 under. You have had very little success this year. And a guy just hits a home run with 2 runs, with 2 outs in the top of the ninth to tie a game. Like you can't. And I kind of felt the same way about Arias when he broke up the no-hitter. Was it Arias? Ramos, who got excited.
Flip.
It's like, when you're a bad team, you gotta pick the moments if you don't have a lot of them. So, the problem with the Giants is that they followed up, like they've just made so many mistakes that have ended up costing them that it's become who they are. It really has.
Well, and that's why, again, I do look at Vitello a little bit, not as the reason why this team is bad, but on that podcast 4 years ago, he's discussing how he said in baseball, you have to have a personality. This Giants team doesn't have a personality. And that's why I don't really mind Adames flexing or jumping around when he hits a game-tying home run. It's like he's trying to do anything in his power to provide a spark, whether it's in a game or at a point in the season. It's not gone their way. And I could understand Vitello maybe keeping it toned down a bit for the first few weeks.
Right.
First couple months. We're in game 100 almost. So that's 2 college seasons that he's had now. And it doesn't really feel like he he has a sense of what kind of manager he wants to be. Maybe it'll take a year, maybe it'll take a couple years, because again, he's had no professional experience and it's been an unprecedented move. But it kind of, like, why was he brought in the first place? Because of his predecessor, in my opinion.
Right.
Bob Melvin was an old school, emotionless, flatline kind of guy. And I thought Vitello was supposed to be the anti-Melvin. And in 2 years, hell, even just last season, like, Bob Melvin has thrown a fit more times than Tony Vitello has so far.
Well,
that's weird to me.
Well, think of all the times last year where Melvin was at least prickly. You know what I mean? Or annoyed. And I kind of feel like Vitello now, after 100 games, like, he just knows they're not a very good team. So can he really hammer the guys out of the bullpen who aren't performing? What good will that do if he doesn't think they're good enough anyway? I think we're seeing a manager right now who doesn't, like, if he had a personality coming in, I think he purposely wanted to downplay his personality, and maybe still is to some degree. And, I know it's easy to say, it's still only been 100 games. Maybe it'll take a couple years for him to really find himself if he's around that long. But I look at the situation he's in, and I do kind of say, well, what do you want him to do? Well, we want him to manage like he did at Tennessee. No, you don't. Like, I don't think you really want that. And I think he's smart enough to know that he can't do that at this level. So I think in some ways he's still figuring out who he wants to be as a manager at this level, or maybe even if he wants to stay managing at this level.
Well, I think they hired him because they want to win. They want to win like he did at Tennessee. I mean, I don't think that's even in doubt. They want a manager who can lead a team to victories, and they haven't done that. I would ask you this, and I'm kind of curious. Do you think that if they were winning games, that he would be like he was at Tennessee? Because it sounds like some of your observations are due to just the lackluster performance from his squad.
I think he'd definitely be more enthusiastic, obviously, if they were winning more. I think if they were closer to 500 and closer to competing, he would be absolutely more on edge. Like, I think right now it's not he doesn't care or he's mailing it in or any of those things, but I do sense a little bit of resignation, that he knows this team's not good enough. He knows that the veterans on this team, he's got to be a little bit careful with. And the young guys, he doesn't want to either break their spirit or doesn't think they're good enough to tear down.
Well, that's why I keep feeling like there's a disconnect between him and, I don't want to say whatever part of the team he's managing, but it's like, okay, so last night you would expect the fired-up coach to be fired up for a game-tying home run.
Right.
He's not. Okay. When he gets tossed by an umpire, you would expect a guy who has never been afraid to kick some dirt on the plate or shout or curse out an umpire. You'd expect him to do that. He hasn't. He's actually been very respectful. With the media, apparently he had a great relationship with local media members in Tennessee. You would expect him to get along with the media. Well, so far, it hasn't really gone that way. It's interesting that the things that you would expect him to be good at, or the things that you're expecting from him in general, it's kind of flown the other way. And that's why I don't know if it's good or bad, but there's something either he's missing or we're missing about him. And I do think that it's going to take some time. It has to, because he has no prior experience. The Giants, I think, have to give him some runway. But the problem is that runway might cost you a year or two of some really bad baseball. And I don't know that they're patient enough to do that. And I know fans certainly aren't patient enough to do that.
I mean, the funny thing to me about this year is I feel like since the big year with Kapler where they won, 107, since then they've been essentially a 500 team. And it feels like during that period of time, a lot of Giants fans said, we're right there. We're 500. Just tweak here, tweak there, gets us up into the mid-80s, and now we can be a wild card team. But during that period, they must have been just bandaging it together because, now they've hit a point where Giant fans, like, why have we looked at the last few years of the Giants and said, 80 wins, 81 wins, we just need to, get a closer, somebody has a big year, we get a guy, all of a sudden we're at 86 and we're contending for a wild card. But something has happened this year where you can't look at the Giants and say, they're a tweak or two away, because they're going to win 70 games this year or 75 games this year. And that's not close anymore. So did all those other teams overachieve? If these two teams the last 2 years were similar in terms of personnel, why are they so much worse this year than they've been in the last 3 or 4 years?
Well, you see it around baseball. People used to say that a team adopts the identity of their manager. And maybe the last couple of years you could say it was Melvin and Kapler, but because of the way Vitello is, I don't think they've adopted the identity of Vitello, but I do think that the Giants, they've adopted the identity of their front office. And with Farhan, it was platooning and plug and play, short contracts, trying to puzzle piece seasons together. Analytics were heavily involved. And they kind of moved away from that because it wasn't producing the results they want. But as a result, Steiny, they just feel very disjointed. Like, I don't really know what to expect from the Giants on a given night. And in a team like they played last night, Kansas City, it's clear why that team is not doing very well. They're really banged up, and they're young. The Giants have had, for the most part, pretty good luck with injury, and they're a pretty experienced group. Now, I know they're integrating younger players now, but they were advertised as an older core, and they don't feel to me, like an experienced or there's just no consistency about them.